Welcome to Home Dad Chat, brought to you by the National At-Home Dad Network. My name is Brock,
My name is Danny.
and we are here to talk about life as stay-at-home dads. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
No, I don't want much. I even love handmade crafts made of macaroni. Come on now, you should know me. Times I might eat too much. No worry about my weight. Got the dad bod rocking on me. Sketches on my feet. Cargo shorts look good on me. I'm a dad, that's what I do.
Hey, everybody, welcome back. It is getting into the holiday season, so I thought I would come wearing my festive new holiday sweater with the elf and Buddy the Elf, and oh my God, it's Santa, I know him. Sweater vest, actually.
I didn't get the memo, so
It's
I'm just
okay.
wearing my Avengers t-shirt. Sad but true.
I wore this to my kids' Christmas play tonight. It was pretty funny. People were kind of giving me all kinds of looks, but it was fun nonetheless.
I think other than some kind of sweater party that you're going to, Christmas sweater party, that's probably the most appropriate clothing you could wear for a kid's
That's what I
Christmas
thought.
party.
It was either that or it was gonna be Snoopy in front of his doghouse with his Christmas lights all over, because I have that sweater too. So
Nice. I am bereft of Christmas sweaters, I'll admit it. I don't think I've ever owned a Christmas sweater.
I've only just gotten them, so it was just a fluke thing. Walked into Target and they were there, and my wife was like, "What do you think of this?" And I was like, "Sure, I'll wear that."
Yeah.
Hey, and being an event coordinator, you got to have stuff like that for the brewery and whatnot too.
It's known, right?
I think so.
It's one of those things that somebody's going to be looking around and going, "Where's the event coordinator?" You see the guy in the sweater,
Yeah.
and that's all they have to say, right?
See that goofy guy over there?
Yeah. They don't even have to say goofy; they'll know. It's implied.
Yeah,
The guy in the sweater. Oh yeah, that guy.
that guy, exactly. So, well, got to be able to find me in a crowd. So that's the way that works.
Mhm.
But
Perfect.
yeah, no, we had Hezekiah's Christmas play tonight, and that was a lot of fun. And he had a part, so he had like a solo actually, and he was so excited about it. And every time that he would be practicing it, like in the car or listening to it on the CD player or whatever, around the house, it was always so quiet. And I'm like, dude, you're gonna have to project your voice. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, you're gonna have a microphone on, but like, you're gonna project your voice. And so we're like, all right, go to the show and everything. And we sat right behind a family that we know who their son actually had one of the lead roles in the play. He was playing King Herod. He's like a very, like, for a fifth grader, he's a very seasoned actor.
Mhm.
And a like ballerina prima type person. Like he actually has been a part of like the Cincinnati Ballet Company. And so this kid, like, he knocks it out of the park. And then Hezekiah and his crew get up, and they're all shepherds. And like, when his time to shine came, he turned it on. And like,
Good.
Corey and I looked at each other, our mouths just dropped to the floor. We're like, what in the world?
Mhm.
Like, it was amazing. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. And I think that he seems like he really enjoyed it. We're like, is this something you'd want to do? And it seems like he's looking at maybe doing like a drama camp now. So
Awesome.
yeah, I
That's
was
great.
super happy for him, and super happy to hear that he's interested in that too.
And I had some great advice from a friend of mine years and years ago. Unintentional advice, really, but she has 6 kids, and they had a hobby farm, and it was an agro-tourism farm and all this. So her kids worked a lot, and they had a lot of things going on, and they were all homeschooled. And we were talking about it, and she said, I didn't have to homeschool. We could have done public school, but I found that this would work better since I need them on the farm. Like, first thing in the morning, I can't be getting you ready to go get on the bus. We've got to
Right.
go, literally have to go milk the cows or take care of the goats or whatever.
Yep.
And she was talking about it, and she said, one of the things that I've always stressed and I wanted for my kids is they spend some time in some way on stage.
Oh, cool.
And I said, yeah, okay, fine. And I didn't get it, right? It just didn't. I'm like, on stage, I don't. Okay, I mean, I can see that. Like, you could be a public speaker or something, or do plays, but the reality of how a person changes when, especially kids, when they get up on that stage.
Oh yeah.
And they face that challenge, of course, which is a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
But my he's 14 now, but James, I went to he was going to be in the Christmas play. And I looked at the teacher and said, this is amazing. I can't believe it. My little introvert is going to be in the Christmas play. This is great. And the teacher looked at me and said, James? I said, yeah. He said, he's not an introvert. And I said, yes, he is. He does this and he does this and he does this. And the teacher's like, no, wait till you see him. And I was shocked. Just like you said, it was like, this is wow. He just did all the things that you would want a kid to do on stage, right? Just leaned into his part. And I'd love to hear that Hezekiah is doing that, because that's going to allow him, I think, to explore a lot of things in life that he might never have if you hadn't given him that opportunity.
Yeah.
Whatever it might be.
He was so excited to like audition. And I mean, when he came home and said that he got the part, like he didn't really like divulge everything. Like he's really good about keeping things back. And, I want it to be a surprise. And that's exactly, he obtained that like fully. So it was a lot of fun tonight. It was probably one of the few school shows that I've actually enjoyed in the time that we've been there, honestly. So
that is a thing too. Watching kids perform. Yeah. We have our first 5th grade orchestra concert, air quotes, next week, the 14th, 15th, something like that. And I am not looking forward to that one. I don't
earbuds, dude, or like
right. Just something that camouflage, and just like put a hat on and earbuds under it, and just that sounded, I think, great. I don't know. So I didn't do much today personally. We had a little political thing with the county going on, which is a lot of interesting politics and drama. If you're into that, I'm not really into that.
Yeah.
But last night we had someone in the local community who started a men's group.
Oh,
and
cool.
Last night was the first meeting of the men's group, and there's 12 members currently, and for a tiny little town, that's very impressive. And I went, and that's what I did last night. I spent about an hour and a half, 2 hours or so, just talking about some interesting things with a bunch of men from the local community. That's great. It really felt good.
Yeah.
And I didn't have to plan it, and I didn't have to schedule it, and I didn't have to find a place for it.
That's always nice.
I just showed up, and it was amazing, the difference. And one of the guys said, well, I really want to start out with a mission statement. And cool. That's fine. We should know why we're here. Right. And I've written several mission statements. I've gone over the mission statement for, the organization. I've not like I've changed that at all, but I've seen it. I know how the value of it. Did my own vision statement for becoming vice president and yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
And it was amazing to just sit there and watch these guys come up with these ideas. And every once in a while I would throw something in, but it was so relaxing. It was amazing, because I'm like, these are full grown adults who have no need of me. They don't need me to do anything at this point. So it was a lot of fun, but I have to say, I'm really glad I did it. I'm really glad all the other men did it. Just, we talk about a lot of times about how the organization is a men's group, and that's a men's group for us. But going beyond that and adding to my support network of having local men that I can hang out with and, whatever we're going to end up doing. And if nothing else, just to talk to face to face. It was very valuable. And again, I stress it to everybody. You need a mentor and a men's group.
No, that's awesome, man. Yeah. We talk about that all the time. And I love the fact that you have something like that now up there. 'Cause I've seen the value of it just with the dad's group I run.
Right.
And to be able to just have a group of men to be able to come around. Like I actually, one of the the music minister actually at our church, he and I have just kind of gotten to know each other over past year, and our kids are of similar ages and stuff. And he and I just kind of hit it off. And so we're like, hey, let's meet for coffee. And we did that one time. And then we've had him over for dinner. And then we just met recently. And I was like, why don't we just start making this like a monthly thing? Like, it seems like we both really need like just that connection and that outlet for a couple hours just to come together, drink some coffee in the morning and chat before we both split off to work. And he was like, I love that idea. And I'm like, great. I'm just going to set it up on the calendar and I'll just put your email in here. And I was like, we'll both be connected with it. And so that's what we have. As long as life does not get in the way, that is the plan from here on out. Is once a month we're gonna meet up and have coffee and just chat. So I'm excited for that because that's something that I haven't had in a long time.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah. And I think too, like what we're talking about here with the men's group and the dad's group, and just meeting up with somebody one-on-one, falls right in line with our guest for tonight.
Yes, it does. That's why I brought it up.
I know you're good at it. Yeah, I figured that's what you were teeing up. So, but I'm excited because last time this guy was on, you got to talk to him, and I just got to edit it and listen to it, which was still lots of fun. But I'm excited that we're going to bring Pete Armstrong back on and chat with him. I think that we're going to get a little deeper conversation in some areas than the stuff that you guys were talking about, and so I feel like there's some parameters we're trying to work in this time for this conversation. So
be a little more structured.
Yeah, a little bit.
Good, yeah,
definitely.
Yeah.
But so I'm excited that we were able to get him on, and we'll be right back after this commercial to talk a bit more with Pete. Become a member of the National At-Home Dad Network, an organization focused on providing advocacy, community, education, and support, connecting with households where dad is the primary caregiver of the children. We do this through our webinar and podcast series, mental health support groups, regular online social events, as well as our annual convention. The National At-Home Dad Network is a 100% volunteer organization. Without the generous support of its members and the community around it, we would not be able to continue the work that we do. Becoming a member gives you access to past convention speaker presentations, the ability to vote for board members annually, and ensures that the organization's fees and bills are in positive standing. Oh yeah, it should not go unmentioned that there is some cool swag headed your way if you decide to become a member. For only $35 a year, your membership provides you with the exclusive content only we can generate, and you'll be supporting an organization that benefits families all around the country and world. By advocating for them, offering them community, providing education and guidance, and supporting them to grow in their parenthood journey. And one last thing, if you contribute $500 or more, you will become a lifetime member. Not only will you receive everything already mentioned, but also a certificate recognizing your status and an exclusive National At-Home Dad Network challenge coin with our trademark logo, Dads Don't Babysit. So, what are you waiting for? Become a member today. And
welcome back, everybody.
Yes.
No, you said me.
Oh, sorry. I didn't know you were going to do that part
I'm
too.
done.
No, don't do that.
Mike.
Try again.
So we've been discussing trying to get Brock to talk less, and we're actually considering, because I know Pete a little bit better, and we've had 2 conversations already, that might be easier if I kind of started us off with it. So welcome, Pete. Thanks for coming back to the show. We do appreciate it. And I know we've done a little bit of your bio previously, but I would like to just kind of give everyone listening now an idea of who you are, what you're doing here, what your intent or your hope is for what you're joining not only the podcast, but just in general with the organization and with dads and men, and including that, of course, your current status as far as kids and fatherhood and things like that. So if you would introduce yourself, that'd be great.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. It's nice to be back on the show. Brock, nice to meet you virtually.
Yeah.
Danny, good to see you again, brother.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, so I'm first and foremost, I'm a dad. And I can we swear on this, or is swearing not good?
Bring it on.
Don't you can swear.
What? No, see, there you go, right there. And there we are. We're now in the explicit portion of Spotify.
I don't usually get recorded cussing, but I cuss a lot.
The ratings are going to go up, folks.
Somebody just crashed their car while listening to this podcast.
My kids are here. Yeah, you should bleep that out.
That's actually a good point.
You should bleep that out, because not appropriate language for someone's kids. That was wrong.
Danny, all you gotta do is say
Just
earmuffs, man. Earmuffs.
Just cut that out. This is not going to be
All
an
right, this is
explicit
good.
show, but yes, if you
You're fine. Go for it. Yeah. If you feel the
Yeah,
appropriate
need
okay.
to,
language.
Well,
do it.
basically what I was gonna say, I was gonna drop that bomb that I effing love being a dad. And
Mhm.
I really do. I think it's, in my opinion, it's probably the most important job I have. I mean, my faith is important to me, so I try to, I wanna do what I think God wants me to do. That one's a little more challenging, but being a dad is really up there for me. And so I'm a father of three. I have my daughter just turned 18 last week, my oldest, and then I have a 15-year-old son and a 6-year-old daughter from two different relationships, two different marriages, essentially. And my older kids, I've had primary placement of them for basically their entire life.
Mhm.
And so, although I'm not an at-home dad per se, I've had primary placement and been a primary caregiver.
Mhm.
So that's part of why I want to be a part of this community. Is we have something in common, and I believe I have something to offer. And in my business, I have a mental fitness coaching and training business, and I primarily work with men who are struggling with some sort of overwhelm, anxiety, shame, stress, and I'm trying to help them build greater self-confidence. And I usually do this through mindset coaching, so helping men understand what's holding you back. What are the thoughts and the negative criticisms you have going on in your mind that are pervasive, and
Mhm.
try to quiet those. In addition, I help men learn how the mind works, and I also help men who are struggling with some sort of addiction. And so this is usually not for example, like someone who's drinking, a 12 pack a day or something of that nature. It's more of little low level addictions that are still getting in the way of men's well being.
Mhm.
And so I help men basically, in a nutshell, I'm trying to help dads be happier so that their families are healthier. That's really what I'm trying to do. I actually just made a new saying for myself. I'm a well being advocate for men.
I like
I
it.
like
That,
that. Like that.
yeah, I just
Put it
want
on
to
a
help.
t-shirt.
I mean, maybe. Um, so yeah, and at the end of the day, I want to help men love more and fear less.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that.
That's
That's another t-shirt.
Yeah, that's absolutely that's a saying for sure. And
I mean, really, yeah.
Mhm.
So that's me. That's what I do. And I live in Madison, Wisconsin. I love bikes. I love to race bikes. I love to ride bikes. My faith is important to me. And love my two top values are fun and connection.
Nice,
Yeah.
I can
nice.
understand why you got connected to this podcast.
There we go.
Well, we've been talking a lot, and we mentioned this actually in the intro. And we talk a lot of times. We say that we feel that every man needs two things to grow, and that's a mentor and a men's group. And the things that we find that kind of run a common thread through all of that, I think, fall right in line with what you call mental fitness. We kind of grow up in either our own families or in the communities that we move into and find that men really don't have the things they need to get around those things like fear or shame, or really just emotional self-awareness is lacking in a lot of men. We have a lot of things that we look at that I don't have any idea how to do that. The YouTube series of a man that basically is teaching you everything your dad was supposed to have taught you. It's how to change spark plugs or how to fix a thermostat and all these things. And he has a huge following because there's so many of us who don't have that. And in line with that, we never learned really, okay, I didn't learn how to program the thermostat or replace a thermostat or change the oil, but I also didn't learn how to be present for my kids. I didn't learn how to be really non-sexually intimate with my partner. I never learned how to really tell my kids, yes, I love you, and not feel weird about it or odd about it. And I think that falls in line really with any man. And I'm not saying women couldn't feel this, but I think men have that. And this is our conversation is about men tonight. And of course, more specifically about our main audience of at-home dads, of course. And leaning into that a little bit, we talked previously in emails and what have you about one of the main things that a lot of dads that we find that they feel is lonely. And that's why we say, yeah, you need a men's group. You need men that you can just hang out with but also men that you can talk to, that you can not be alone with. You know, the difference of being, well, I'm in a group of people, but I'm still alone. And men that you can be together with and have that bond, and that isolation that you get from being a carefree young person out there in the world, and now you're partnered up and you lose a lot of friends, and then you have kids and you lose a lot of friends, and then you become an at-home parent and you lose a lot of friends, right? And your community really diminishes over that time. And I'd like to talk about a little bit about that isolation, and how that isolation for many of us leads to feelings of depression. And because it's such a common thing, what your thoughts are about how we move out of that or get through that.
Challenging.
You're welcome.
And yeah, we're going to solve this today.
Right? All the world's problems, bring them
on. So a little bit of what I'm hearing is what's unique, for example, with the at-home dad population or dynamic is loneliness. And you gave this beautiful description of why and kind of the nuances that lead to this loneliness in a way. And so I started thinking like this: if we were to take a bigger view of this, we're going to talk about dads, but at the fundamental level of being a human being, we're designed for relationship.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed.
We are designed for a relationship. Like, it doesn't even matter if you're a man or woman. We are literally designed for relationship. And why is this important? Because guess what? Men are also humans.
Mm-hmm. Surprising.
But I mean, but so many, we talk about these things and like the masculine and the feminine. At the end of the day, if you just look at it, we're designed for relationship. So if that's the way we're designed, then that's the way we need to adhere.
Mm-hmm.
So we need and we need to find ways to connect. And so the challenge with that is not only the dynamic at-home dads, but I would start getting at like what's in the mind, what's the story that at-home dad, or what's the negative emotions, what's the story they're telling themselves that's getting in the way of them connecting with other men or people.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end of the day, that is going to be really important.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious about that. So can maybe Danny, I know we kind of talked about this once, but maybe Danny or Brock, like, help me understand a little bit. What are some of and what I mean by the story? Like, what's that voice in your head that you're saying that's getting in the way of you, that's really leading you to isolate?
I think that what you run into with an at-home dad coming into this place of isolation, and I feel like in a way they kind of cage them. You kind of cage yourself as an at-home dad into this place of isolation because you feel like you are going to immediately get attacked for your role instead of coming into it with confidence in a conversation with other people, because in the situation, the conversation always goes around with like, who are you? Oh, these are my kids. Okay. Oh, what do you do for a living? And then that question right there, that is the red light question, because it's like, all right, like for at-home dads, it's the fork in the road, I guess is the better way to look at it. You have two ways to go. You can either say, oh, I'm an at-home dad, or you can come up with this like great way to like get around saying that by saying something along the lines of like, oh, like I do these things, and then also too, like, I take care of my kids. Like you don't just come right out and be like, I'm a stay-at-home dad. Like my job is to primarily take care of these kids while my spouse is out, being the breadwinner type of deal. And so that to me is probably with the first hurdle that comes into this whole thing. Cause like either you're going to come into it with confidence, or you're going to come into it with like, just, I don't want to talk about this, that kind of deal. And so when you're in that, I don't want to talk about this phase, like you've already isolated yourself. You're not even giving somebody the chance to even like uplift you or to, encourage you, or to even come along and say like, that's awesome. Like, that sounds like, whatever. Like some people are like, oh, that sounds like a great deal. Like you get to do this. Like, yeah, no, right. I don't get away from my children in the way that you probably do, kind of deal.
Yeah.
But because you get that. But the thing with it is like coming into that, the other side of it is you're just like, I really enjoy this. This is what I like to do. And so it really comes down to that. Like there's two streets to it. You can either come into the conversation with confidence, or you can come into this conversation with like, I don't really want to tell anybody. And at that point, you've already isolated yourself.
So, Brock, do you mind if I ask you a couple of questions?
Bring it.
So help me understand, how come you come into a conversation sometimes? What I'm hearing you say, you feel like you're going to be attacked. So you fear some sort of, is that like a fear of judgment or criticism?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Because if you think about it, if you're somebody who maybe they've gone to college and they've got a degree and like they're not using that degree because they're an at-home dad, like they're already feeling this, immense pressure for the fact that they're now in a position that's completely different than maybe what they thought they were going to be doing.
So because they're not, for example, in that case, is that your case, Brock? Do you have a degree and then you feel like you're not using it?
I have a degree and I'm definitely not using it, but my degree is something that it translates into what I do now. Because my degree is in youth ministry and biblical studies, and I am constantly working with different people. And, as a youth minister, what do? You're usually like communicating with people, setting up events for everybody to have fun stuff. I'm an event coordinator at a brewery. And, prior to that, I was, full-time stay-at-home dad. But even then I was also, I'm running this dad's group here in Cincinnati. And so I was doing the same thing. I was, talking to these people about, hey, let's do this event or let's go to the zoo. Or I was talking to news stations about like, hey, like, can I get on and talk about fatherhood, that kind of deal. So I used it differently, but at the same time too, like I definitely went into being an at-home dad without any like I'm not gonna be isolated. That was pretty much my motto. I am not going to be isolated. I am going to reach out to other dads and connect in different ways locally and also, World Wide Web, however it works. And I've definitely have stuck to my guns on that, and it's brought me into a lot of great space. But I know that's not the case with all dads.
Yeah. So what I was wondering is because, I don't know if you guys heard of this, and can be shared with all the listeners, but you can do the research on this. There's something in our mind, a protective mechanism called the inner critic. Have you guys heard of it? I use something called positive intelligence in my work. It's called positive intelligence. It's a mental fitness platform. They call this construct the judge. And what the judge does is the judge is this protective mechanism that every human has. And we developed it in childhood. And it's really was created to keep us emotionally safe. Because as a child, I can't think. Basically, my parents, I have to be able to trust them with everything. Because if they can't keep me safe, the child cannot bear that burden. And so what happens is in the mind, we develop this inner construct that basically we're judging our situation, we're judging people, we're judging ourselves to keep us emotionally safe. The thing is that carries on forever with us. Meaning, you can judge yourself, you can judge others, or judge your circumstances. And what I'm hearing, for example, with you, Brock, is in some way, shape, or form, you're judging yourself. And that creates shame, guilt, anxiety, whatever, right? And then now you're in this place, you're in the group, you're already in fear. And when we're in fear, our mind shuts down. Because in some way, shape, or form, we're afraid. We don't want to be judged. We don't want to be criticized. So what the mind does is it shuts down. And then when it shuts down, Brock, I'm just, kind of, Brock, you and I are talking. This happens to me too if I have shame or don't believe in myself, whatever. What happens is that now it's hard to be ourselves.
Yep. Yeah, definitely.
Is any of this resonating?
I mean, I think I'm I feel like I'm kind of opposite, honestly. Like
Tell me more.
Well, I'm not really like, because I don't really feel any shame or anything like that. What I'm saying, I guess, from my side of things is that like I've kind of dealt with that side of trying to let people or feeling like people are judging me or whatever, or vice versa. I don't know how to actually explain that. But basically for me, I've just kind of been in this place over the past few years of like, I would rather just be all out there in the front, doing the things that I know want to do and not feel like, oh, I need to worry about XYZ thing or whatever. And so that's pretty much been my platform of just being open about like my
Sure.
mental health and just being able to not hold things in and talk to people about stuff. So that's what I was saying was like, I kind of come into the whole being an at-home dad of like, I'm fine with it. Everything's good. I'm just going to basically use my time to spend time with my kids and connect with other dads and hopefully help them to not feel isolated in their situations.
Mm-hmm.
So this is good. Let me ask you then. So Danny he led the topic you wanted to get at a little bit was isolation. And what I was trying to kind of just give an example is if we have this self-judgment, if we have this shame, this guilt, whatever it is, that's going to tell us not to connect.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And so what I'm getting at is when that happens, when we have guilt, or excuse me, when we have shame, we don't feel like we're good enough, we're going to have these feelings that we shouldn't connect. But guess what you need to do when that happens?
Oh, you definitely need to connect.
We need to connect.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And you will learn this in 12 steps. I've been in 12 steps before. You will learn in 12 steps is when you're struggling, call somebody. Because when we're in shame, people who are addicted to things, guess what you're most likely about to go do?
Yeah.
Right
Back to your
into
addiction.
it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because it makes you feel good.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but if you're not, but there's another way to get free from that pain, and that's connection.
Mm-hmm.
And so for the listeners, when you are in shame, shame is that like, and I can read it right here, actually, matter of fact. By the way, this, I think we're on audio and video, the book by Brene Brown, The Gifts of Imperfection. It's a fabulous book. It radically changed my life. It talks about everything from shame to empathy to belonging to love, compassion, all these beautiful things that I think all men need. Shame is the intensely painful feeling or experience of believing that we are flawed and therefore unworthy of love, belonging, and connection.
Yeah. I get a lot of times where, especially in the dads group, I've got guys who they come up with all kinds of reasons for why it is that they don't want to connect, get involved. Like they'll ask to be in the dads group. And then when it comes time to like, hey, we're going to do a dad's night out or something like that, like they've got all the reasons in the world not to go. And the ones that actually you can tell like they're right there on the fence are the ones that actually like post something about it. Like, well, I'm just not quite sure, whatever. And there's always guys who jump in. They're like, I felt the exact same way as you. I wasn't sure if this is what I wanted. And then I went. I decided to not just dip my toe in, but actually jump in. And it was the best thing I did. And a lot of the guys are like, if it wasn't for that, just like, all right, like I'm going to do this. This is why I joined here into this group. And they come and they show up at the dad's night out and they meet some other dads. And next thing you know, like they're actually building relationships and friendships with guys that they would have otherwise never known. And that turns into, them hanging out on the side or they're like, oh, well, we live close to each other in the same neighborhood. So like they just start hanging out on their own with their kids and whatnot. And I find that to be the most successful thing for anybody who's like, oh, I want to, but I don't, like they're just going back and forth. And it's like, just jump in, just
yes,
just do it.
So I actually have this right there. It's called, so jumping in, right? Like, and that's like, we're afraid, but still, rip the Band-Aid off or whatever. The saying that I have right there on my wall is mood follows action.
Yes.
And what that means is like, for example, the mental state you desire to like inhabit and have, it happens after you take the action. So for example, you want to feel happy, you want to feel loved, you want to feel connected to another brother and friend. But before you go do it, some of these guys are like, I'm afraid because they might not accept me. I might not like it, right? You have fear, whatever that is. But once they get there, what I'm hearing you say, Brock, they're like, man, this is awesome.
Yep.
So that's so for the listeners, Google mood follows action and you'll find Rich Roll. And there's amazing science behind that. Sometimes we just need to jump.
Yeah. Bingo. And
Definitely.
we had a guest on previously who really touched on this too, about that need for connection or intimacy. Brock, it was Jim Young, and he wrote Expansive Intimacy, which is about burnout, which is another big facet of what we get in this job, because we don't ever have any time off.
Yeah.
Parenting, especially if you're a full-time at-home parent, is relentless. It never stops. You don't get a break when the sun goes down. You don't get a break on holidays. You don't get a break if the kids are sick. You actually have to work more. If you're sick, you have to work even more, and you burn out pretty quick. And we run into that a lot of times. And basically the answer for that was back to connecting, to getting into that community, wherever that might be. And a part of it was, well, how do I get a community? How do I get involved in the community? I want this. I really want this. And you said it. Just do it. Just jump in. Go ahead. Both feet and see what happens. And you have to be ready for potentially a little, oddity, or it might be a little weird, or even rejection. But that's how you build it. You get in there, and you're not going to fit in everywhere. No one is going to fit in everywhere. And there may be groups that aren't right for you. But the reality of it is finding that community, building that community if you have to. And that helps overcome the isolation and, of course, the depression that comes generally from isolation, which we all know is a very big issue across the board for men.
Well, loneliness, this is another study. I encourage everyone, you guys can do the research here. Maybe you've already heard of this, but loneliness kills more men than alcohol and smoking combined.
I wouldn't doubt it.
So,
yep.
You put that in our email, and I went, oh, that's just something you're saying, I mean, I didn't mean to be critical of it, but I'm like, okay, Pete, that's fine. We can touch on that. But no, it's actually defined science by, I think it was Harvard.
Literally, it is a Harvard.
Yeah.
So there's the study I'm talking about. Listen, this study's been going on for 80 years. Harvard's been doing this longitudinal study, so over time, for over 80 years, and the populations have primarily been men, not just men that went to Harvard, right? Like the poorest men in the Boston neighborhoods. I just said Boston like that.
Boston. Wow.
And what they found in all these different men populations, the men that had the most happiness were the men that had relationships with people that they felt connected to, that cared about them. So top Harvard guys making, let's just say millions, probably literally millions of dollars, and the guy making zero. What they found across the board is the ones that had connected relationships had the greatest well-being. And so why does that matter? Because sometimes you got to stop listening to your mind. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, totally makes sense.
Right?
Yeah,
like, that's the move follows action. Like, hey, I'm afraid about getting rejected, because here's the thing, guys. There's a partial truth that you probably have some sort of data or information based on an experience that you were rejected in the past. That was painful. So guess what? You don't want it to happen again. And so your mind's saying, oh, hey, I don't want that to happen again. And so what it does, it wants to protect you. So it's telling you, don't go and connect. Because if you believe that you might get rejected, and getting rejected is painful, your mind's like, okay, well, then that's a tiger in the bush. We're not going.
We're not doing that. Right.
I'm going to stay home.
Yeah.
And it keeps you safe. But again, it sabotages you, because at the end of the day, we really need connection.
Yeah. It's that immediate.
I'll digress there.
But not that long term will not make you happy. It's that immediate moment of, oh no, we're going to do this. Well, yeah, we do. We need to go ahead and it's like getting a shot, a flu shot. And that's going to hurt. Yeah. Yep. It's going to hurt, but it's not going to hurt a lot. It's only going to be for a second, and you'll be better afterwards. And if you need to think of joining a men's group as a flu shot, you're welcome. There you go. I gave you your illustration of why you should go to a men's group, join a men's group.
And the cool thing is, like, think about what we're talking about. Like, so often you will find, and even in, I'll just say this too, in the non-at-home dad space. Okay. The men that I work with, they also have this shame of like that they can't share, or they don't belong. Right. And it's like, but when you get to share that, like, Brock, I don't feel like I belong. Or Danny, I don't feel like I belong. I don't feel like I'm good enough. Dude, just get that off your chest, get that out of your body. and the Brock to accept that, I'm like, hey man, you belong here.
Right.
That in itself is healing.
Yep.
Yep.
I
No,
digress.
definitely.
I get excited about this stuff.
No,
We
you're
all
fine.
do.
No, you're fine. The whole time, yeah. No, I was thinking the whole time you were talking about this, like this is something that, being around military veterans, that that's a big thing. Like you're talking about isolation, talking about just judgment, different things like that. Like the amount of guys that I know, that are ex-military who typically isolate themselves because they don't want to deal with the public or whatever, or they don't feel like anybody is going to be able to understand what they've gone through, or whatever it is. Like I feel like there's like always compounding things with veterans, but it's interesting. Like once you get them to accept the fact that they need to step outside and actually like do the things they enjoy with other people, or get connected with some other veterans, and like kind of just not give a fuck what anybody else says about like what your service was or whatever like that, and just, hey, like I'm back, like I want to be treated like every other civilian type of thing. Those guys that actually make that step and go in that direction, or even the women too, like it's life changing. Like there's an organization here in town, and I think there's other chapters, but basically their thing is all about like getting outdoors. And so they take groups like fishing and hunting and kayaking and canoeing and doing different things. And it's for not only like, it's for disabled veterans too. Like they actually work really hard to like, give disabled veterans the ability to go do things that they might not otherwise. Maybe they don't have the equipment to do it or whatever it is. Like they actually work to get the equipment so that they can do that. And then they can come back and they can keep doing it. Like, and that's the kind of stuff. Those are the kind of programs that really help show somebody, hey, like you don't have to be isolated, and you also have people who back you and encourage you and want to see you thrive in life. And that's the other thing, is like being able to feel that, like you were saying, like somebody who cares, like you come around somebody who cares about you in an area that maybe you thought nobody cares about this, and then like they actually care. Like that's a huge pump of adrenaline, and just, and like really set somebody in the right path versus them going down the wrong path. And that's there's just a lot of I see that so often, and that is just such a tough thing to watch some guys and gals like struggle.
Well, the
through.
beauty thing about what I'm hearing, Brock, listen, again, if we look at, you're speaking specifically of veterans, but if we look at just the human being again, the human being needs to feel that they belong. We have a deep desire for that, even men.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, like I mean, obviously, I'm being a little facetious, but I'm serious. Deep belonging. So this group, for example, is helping people feel like they belong. Movement, exercise. When we talk about these emotions and depression, and one of the greatest things to remedy that is movement and exercise, right? And being outside, being in nature. How many times do you go outside in nature and it's like, yeah, it ain't that bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it is the combination of these things. And then also the last piece of this is community. What I'm hearing you say is like, right, when you have a community of people that you belong to, belonging is one thing. Yeah. Community is like, man, I got my at-home dad network brothers. You know what I mean? Like, or for this right. veteran group.
Well, that was a huge thing with COVID. I mean, everybody like jokingly was like, "Oh, we're isolated. Oh, like we're staying home dads. That's all we know is isolation." That kind of thing. That was sort of the joke.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, like we're like, if there's one group of us who are gonna live this thing out and survive, it's gonna be the at-home dad, because we've been doing this shit for years, like that kind of thing. And so for us, like that was the thing. But what was interesting during that time of COVID too was, you had the National At-Home Dad Network, their Facebook group. You had the stay-at-home dad group that was a little more international in areas. And just to see the fact that like a lot of those guys were like, I need to connect more with people. Like I'm actually stuck in isolation with my kids. And oh, by the way, I don't get to do my normal routine. I can't just go do these things. So I got to figure out something else. And so you could see like this push into these communities of like, I really need to connect, and I really want to find ways to connect. And that was huge to watch that just take place and grow into some really amazing things within the whole community of at home dads, because you saw these people who were like, hey, like we should have a Zoom call like every once in a while and hang out. And it was like that already, like that had started a while ago. Like I actually started that through the National At Home Dad Network pretty much almost day one of the pandemic. And guys from the group were like, that are in that other group were just like, we've already got that going. Like, you come on right over, like, come hang out with us, kind of deal, which was so funny because the majority of these guys that say, oh, I really want to do that. And then as soon as someone presents, like, well, here, it's already here, they're like, oh, I don't know if I'm in it that much. Like,
Yeah.
you just see them sort of like backpedal out of it. And you're like, oh, come on, like just come over and hang out, like that kind of deal. But things like that, things where guys were trying to connect just based on, hey, I like Lego, hey, I like sports, like all this kind of stuff. Like you just saw these different avenues where it's like, all right, well, this is what I got going on at home. I wonder if anybody else wants to talk about this, because I can't just go to the park and run into random dad and have that kind of conversation. I got to figure out how to make that happen online. And so yeah, over the course of the pandemic, like there was a real need for this like community online to get through just a crazy life situation.
And there's a couple of things that we still should talk about. I'm going to say we are running out of time, though, so I'm not going to open them up. But I do want to just mention them. We're not going to talk about them, and Brock's going to close this out, I swear. But looking at the other things that we run into, and I think we could do an entire show on identity, which is a big part of what we do. Oh, yeah. Brock, you mentioned it earlier about we're not the breadwinner. And there's been a lot of work done in the last year or two about who are men if they're not the breadwinner, where there are so many times where women don't need your money. They're doing just fine. And so they just don't need you. What do I bring to the table? What do I have to offer? And the reality that what masculinity is so much more than money. You provide. I provide for my family, and I bet I haven't made $1,000 in 10 years. But I provide other things that my family needs, right? And again, we don't have time for all this, but something that I think we should touch on at another time and bring up and just talk about what the identity of a man is if he's not the provider. And then the friendship deficit, which we mentioned talking in email together. And I know and you appropriately said that's right in your wheelhouse, and it is. And another thing that I think at home dads especially, but maybe that's just because that's what I am. That's my experience for so long, but we need friends and we don't have any. Right. So I think that anybody listening, and we'll have, of course, all of Pete's details in the show notes. I'm sure Brock will do that. He's a professional. But if anybody needs to reach you, Pete, I really think that they do need to reach out and to touch base with you about these things. About, I'm isolated. What do I do? I'm feeling kind of depressed, or I just don't know what I'm doing, which is a big part of it. So I really appreciate, again, you coming on the show, and I'm sorry we don't have more time, but it is what it is.
Well, thank you. I'd love to come back, guys. But how much time we have, Danny?
5-10 would be fine.
Yeah, we got about 10 more minutes. I think.
How about this? Identity is complexity. There's a lot going on there, but at the end of the day, if we're to make an immediate change, like what's the next step we could do from this conversation? It is to reach out to somebody. And you talk about friendship, right? Like, so if we want, I mean, I'd be willing to talk about that for a couple of minutes, because at the end of the day, man, like if someone's struggling tonight or whenever they hear this, they can reach out to an old friend. Like, hey, Brock, man, I miss you. Right. And so if you guys are willing,
how easy that is.
I'm willing to talk about that if you want for a couple minutes.
Yeah.
So listen, this really gets to my heart, because I have several clients who, when you have shame, again, we're bringing the shame thing up, and you had shame the majority of your life. Like maybe, for example, I had shame the majority of my life, but somehow, some way I made friends. I don't know. But a lot of guys who have shame and who had anxiety or anger, they had a hard time connecting, making friendships. Because when you don't feel like you're worthy, you tend not to connect, or if you fear rejection, you tend not to connect. And so I have men that are literally my guys, some of my guys, not all of them, but I have a subset of guys that are in their 40s who don't have really close friendships. And this is a problem, because if you don't have friends, now you have isolation. You have isolation, you have loneliness. You have loneliness, we know that's not good, right? Worst case scenario, obviously, is suicide. But, and that too, man, I'm just going to say that right now. If you ever have suicide ideation, reach out to somebody. Reach out to somebody. That's not the kind of, I'm not an expert in that regard. But with regards to friendship, I promise, this is my loving advice, is if you have a friend from the past that you genuinely miss, reach out to him. He probably misses you too. I mean, for real.
Right.
And if you don't have a friend, this is what I have found. All my friendships are around some sort of shared interest. It could be Lego, like you guys are saying, some guys are Lego. For me, it's the bike. All my friends, we ride bikes together. So how can you find, what is one of your passions or interests, and can you find another guy that is also interested in that? And can you then come together and bond over that? Because it kind of, then now you have something to kind of talk about other than just like the awkward stuff. It's like, yeah, how's life? How's the kids? You know, you have something else to talk about outside of sports and the family.
Yeah.
You guys have anything that you would add about your friends
Definitely.
or friendship or?
I think I would just agree with what you're talking about, where it's like commonality definitely draws people together. I think that's the conduit, like that's the connection. Like you want to find those things that are common bonds so that you can grow friendships. But also too, I think it's good to like, maybe there's not like that one main thing that's like, oh yeah, that's what I really like to do. Maybe there's like something else that's sitting off to the side. You're like, I enjoy that. I don't get to do that very often. It's sitting over there. And then you run into somebody who like also enjoys it. It's like, all right, well, you get that opportunity to maybe like step away from like your main thing and go do this other thing and really kind of build into that. And then that also is helpful for the other person who you're friends with to be able to, have those off the branch type of things. It's not just one, you're not just going down one road, you're actually branching off and having, these other relationships and being able to do these other things. And so I think that's really important to be able to find that, because you don't want to, I guess for lack of better terms, we'll just use this word, like pigeonhole yourself into one thing. Like when you probably are somebody who has more interest than just one thing. And, sometimes you just have to be looking or be willing to be open to connecting with that other person.
Yeah. And to this point, and this might kick some men's asses, can't do it for yourself. You need to do it for your kids. Do it for your kids. Like if you can't do it for yourself, like if you fear rejection, today we talked about studies, we talked about science, we talked about data of the human condition, right? Do the research. You just learned today that if I don't have connection and I get isolated, I'm most likely to have some sort of depression. I'm not going to feel good about myself, and that's not going to be good. That's going to lead to, right, not feeling like you're a good dad, not a good husband. And so do it for your kids. I tell that, listen, you guys love your kids. Every man here listening, you have unconditional love for your kids. You might not have unconditional love for yourself. I can help you with that.
Nice.
But we have unconditional love for our kids. So do it for your kids. Go reach out to that guy. Read a book, get a therapist, get a coach, join a group, and do it for your kids. Because you want to be a better dad anyway. So if that's one way, I would say that has helped me. When I didn't love myself, I love my kids, and I was like, you know what? I love these kids. I need to make some choices in my life to be a better dad. And that's what helped. That's a piece of loving advice I could do, is do it for your kids.
Self-care is best care.
Yes. Amen.
Definitely. Well, hey, Pete, thanks so much for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure talking with you. And definitely, I think that we'll need to bring you back on so that we can have that conversation on personal identity. I think that would be a great topic. So we'll try to get that scheduled so that we can make that happen. But other than that, with it being the month of December, hope you have a great holiday with your family. And hope you have a great coming into the next new year. And we will talk with you hopefully soon. And with everybody else, we will see you all and talk to you all next week.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
Good night, everybody.
I'm a dad, that's what I do.